up, you guys? The Curious Owl here, and today I have some books that will self-destruct in 1 year. So if you've never heard of this idea of unhauling books if you don't read them kind of challenge or deadline thing, is essentially you set some books up that are going to self-destruct in a year, or basically what will happen is if you don't read them in that year from or whatever time frame really you want to set it for, if you don't read it, you have to automatically unhaul it, because basically what you're trying to do is get through some books that have been on your shelves for a while that you're really kind of unsure about. And from there, if you don't read them, you decide that you're just going to get rid of it because it's obviously not important to you anymore. Now, all of these books that I have, which are 10 books total for right now, are books that I had either bought many years ago, had received as gifts that I was not really sure whether or not they would be something I would enjoy, or I had bought them thinking I was really going to like them, have just been put aside for so long that I'm really not sure that I want to read them anymore for one reason or another. So let's just go ahead and get started with the 10 books that will self-destruct in 2024 if I do not read them. So we are going to go basically in alphabetical order because I had to basically go through my entire physical library in particular, because it's really easy for me to go through my physical books more so than it is my ebooks. Because if I do decide to unhaul an ebook, it's a little bit more difficult in terms of getting rid of the file than it is for me to get rid of a physical book by selling it to the secondhand bookstore that I frequent when I am back in my hometown or anywhere else, like on Pango Books or anything like that. So I picked specifically 10 books from my physical library that I really was not sure on, and just decided to go alphabetical order because it was just kind of how I went through them. So we're just going to start from the top. So the first one is The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert. Now, I had first heard about this book when it first came out back in like 2016, 2017, I think. Let me actually double check when this came out. I think it was around that. I was wrong. It was 2018. Either way, I remember hearing about this when it first came out, and I was initially intrigued because it's going to be about a girl who was essentially whisked away into a world that she thought was completely made up by her grandmother for years, and then everybody stopped talking about it. And so since then I haven't really heard much about this, and I just kind of had it sitting on my shelves for a long time, and I think I might like it to some extent, but I just don't really know. And it's one of those stories where, like, is it really going to make me feel like I'm missing out on something if I don't read it? Or is it better for me to just not read it at all and just go on my merry way? Next is another book that is kind of in that same vein, and that is They Wish They Were Us by Jessica Goodman. Now, this is more of a young adult thriller of sorts, and I did hear some pretty decent things about this, but again, after it came out, I didn't really hear much about it. And I am a fan of YA thrillers. I think they can be done really, really well, but there are certain things about them that I do think are a little problematic in some ways, and so I'm hesitant to read this just because I don't really know of much about it. I really don't even know what the premise of this is. I just remember seeing a lot of people talk about it when it first came out, but I don't really remember much about it. Next is one that I might get some flack for because, one, I'm gonna say probably a lot of people thought I would have read this by now, and two, it seems to be a really popular story, but I'm just not sure if I'm gonna enjoy it because of some of the things I have heard about it that I'm a little hesitant to read into, and that is The Love Hypothesis by Hazelwood. Now, I understand this is a story about women in STEM, which is always amazing. I love reading things about women in STEM, do not get me wrong, but I've heard some mixed things on this book, and I think that especially the main character is going to be one that's going to really grind on my nerves, and I'm just very uncertain of how this one's going to go, so that's why I've been putting it off since I picked up this book. I just don't know. I'm still waffling with it, but if I have a good enough reason in this next year to read it, I will read it. Otherwise, it's just gonna go away, and I don't think I'm gonna miss out on much if I don't read it. The next one is one I've been waffling with because of the fact that I think it would be interesting to read, but again, don't know if it's something I would actually find being super fantastic. And that is Heretics Anonymous by Katie Henry. Now, I received this book actually as a gift several years ago. I just don't really know whether or not I'm going to enjoy it. This is supposed to be a story about a bunch of kids at a Catholic school, and they are all considered heretics because you've got one character who believes that they are atheists, you've got one who is actually Jewish in a Catholic school, and it's all kinds of crazy, and you've got one character who's kind of like not sure of what's going on, and so he joins up a group called Heretics Anonymous at this Catholic school. And it's basically where he meets all these characters and kind of gets involved in the school life. And it seems like something I would kind of enjoy, especially as a young adult novel. But I again had not really heard much about this, and so I'm just kind of unsure whether or not I'm gonna really fully enjoy it. Next is another book that I remember Emma Books had really talked and raved about when it first came out. But again, I have not really heard much about it, and I've just lost interest in it along the way. So if I don't read it in this next year, I definitely will be getting rid of it, no questions asked. And that is All Rights Reserved by Gregory Scott Katsoulis. Now, again, I saw Emma Books back in the day talk about this book when it was being released. It seemed like a really cool idea because if you were ever a fan of like The Giver or Anthem by Ayn Rand, like some of those more classic sci-fi dystopian stories, it reminded me a lot of those. And I had read Anthem by Ayn Rand when I was in high school, and I really liked it a lot, and this reminded me a lot of it. And I was interested because of the fact that this is supposed to be in a world where everybody only has so many words that they're allowed to use, and a lot of them are copyrighted. So if you use certain words, you have to then like pay up. And it can get really expensive really quickly. And so I thought that was a really interesting idea, but over the last handful of years, I've lost interest, and I don't know whether or not this would be something I want to read anymore. And I think especially if I don't read it this year, it's just going to go away, and hopefully somebody else will find interest in it. Now, the next one is because I recently read a book by this author that I did not like, and I am hesitant to read this because I am afraid that their writing style is going to be similar to the one I did not like, and I'm a little nervous to read it. So if I don't read it in this year, I'm gonna basically chalk it up to I'm just not interested in this author anymore, and I'm just going to unhaul the book itself. But this might be a shock for some people too, because I think that a lot of people were really thinking I would like this one, and it is The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. Now, if you have been watching any of my videos for my Finish Your DNF series, I recently released a video that was on my Finish Your DNF series that was for the series Wolff Song by TJ Klune. And I really did not like Wolff Song at all. I hated the way it was written. I really couldn't figure out what was going on. And I said in the video that I was really worried that this was going to affect the way I would read The House in the Cerulean Sea, because if it's a very similar writing style, I am not going to enjoy reading this because I did not like the way that he wrote at all. I am hoping that that is not the case because I would like to be able to like this, since I have heard so many people say it is so good and that they think I would like it. But this one I am just really, really nervous about because I want to like it, I want to read it. But if it's in that same writing style, it's not going to be for me. And again, like I said, if I don't read it at all this year, I am going to chalk it up to basically being, I am no longer interested in this author, and therefore I don't want to read anything that they've really put out for at least some time. Now, the next one is a book I don't really know much about. I got it as a gift from my mom a couple years ago, and it is The Time of Green Magic by Hilary McKay. It's a middle grade, so it would be really easy for me to fly through. It's very, very short, but I don't really know much about it, and I'm kind of just like not sure if I even want to read it anymore, but it looks cute. And again, it is a middle grade, so it's not like I couldn't just fly through this in a day and then call it good and then decide to unhaul it from there. This is kind of like one of those things though where I'm like, it's possible I will like this, so I'm just unsure. It's one of those weird like, I don't know, maybe kind of books. Now the next one though is one I've held on to for a while and have been kind of putting off reading because again, I don't know much about it and I've lost kind of some interest in it, and that is Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Ngan, or Yang. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce the last name. I apologize. This is a young adult fantasy series that I really have not heard much about. And anything I have heard is not raving reviews. So I'm not sure whether or not I'm going to really want to read this, and I feel like, again, this is one of those books where if I don't read it, I don't think I'm going to be missing out on much. So we'll see whether or not I end up picking this one up for any particular reason. Next is one I got on sale, but I've heard a lot of people talk about it. So I'm curious as to why it was on sale, but I'm also aware of some of the issues that are talked about in this book, and I'm kind of staying away from it because I'm afraid of getting triggered to some extent if there is anything here that would be triggering for me, because I've heard a lot of people say it is very, very heavy. And that is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. If you have not read this, I don't think you're missing out on much, because again, it seems like it's a big traumatic story that deals with toxic relationships, and I don't know whether or not I am willing to stomach something that is like this. I want to read it. I want to understand what the story is even really about, but I'm also kind of scared because I don't want to get upset. I don't want to cry. I don't want to feel like this is just torture porn, if you will, to some extent, like emotional torture porn. I don't want it to be that. And I am very much afraid that this is gonna be one of those stories. And the final book, that again is a fairly popular series that I will self-destruct if I do not read it in 1 year, is Crave by Tracy Wolff. I don't even know why I got this book, because when it first came out, everyone was saying that it was, you know, very reminiscent of Twilight. The cover by itself is reminiscent of Twilight. If you didn't get that, you've been living under a rock, I think, for the last probably 15 years of your life. Unless you were not born when Twilight was around, then that would make sense, and I would understand why you haven't been exposed to that. I kind of got this because of some of the hype that was surrounding it, and I'm really second guessing whether or not I should have purchased this. I have no idea whether I'm going to like this. And I'm glad I only got the first book, I will say, because when I did buy it, I was hesitant. And I decided when I had got it that I was going to only get the first one. And if I really, really liked it and wanted to read the rest, then I would get the rest of the books. So without further ado, those are the 10 books that I will self-destruct in 1 year if I do not read them. Now, it is entirely possible that these books will self-destruct much quicker than others. It is entirely possible that some of them I will read and then DNF and decide to unhaul completely, which is totally fine. And it's entirely possible that some of these I'll read and actually kind of enjoy. Like, it really depends. I kind of have to find excuses to read these, especially since I want these to self-destruct. And I am really bad about unhauling books that I haven't read, because I always want to be able to read the books that I'm interested in. But after this last year, when I did all those unhauls in like the last quarter of the year, I felt so much more liberated. And so I feel like that this is a better way for me to start really getting through some of that catalog of books that I was very hit or miss with. And I think that these are a really good example of the kinds of books that I've gotten over the years that I'm just not sure on anymore. And I've been really good about getting books that I'm actually interested in, that I'm going to be reading a little bit sooner. And because of the book buying ban that I also set up for myself this year, it's encouraging me to then read the books that I have on my physical TBR and my Kindle TBR that I've been hesitant to read because I don't have the ability to go and get new books all the time. Even if I get them from the library, I can't get them all the time. And so I have to work with what I have. And this is something that I thought would be really interesting as an experiment for me to try, where if I can read all 10 of these books in this year before the self-destruct time, it might be possible for me to continue that without needing the book buying ban. You know what I mean? So anyway, let me know what you guys thought of these books. Have you read any of these? Did you like any of them? Do you think I'm gonna like any of them? Let me know down in the comments below, and let me know what you think I should read first out of these if I am to pick any of them to read first. But thank you guys all so much for joining me today. If you guys did enjoy this video, please do give it a big thumbs up. And if you haven't already and you'd like to be, I would like to see more content like this, go ahead and hit that button down below and subscribe to become an owlet in our flock. And I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye guys.